Hi, this is Cora Stack again, Dr. Stack. I'm on a bit of a roll with my research on examining justice systems and just looking at the Irish situation. And always, it's a good idea to sort of benchmark the Irish situation with what's going on internationally. To sort of see, can you map the patterns in Ireland to similar patterns abroad? Because I think that makes the case. More global, and I think it's a stronger case when it can be evidenced or aligned with international evidence of a similar nature. And it does reflect, a concern that the whole the whole issue around the power of the courts that are given to it, to the separation of powers, is being quietly eroded over many years, and perhaps it's time to have a reset. And I just mentioned that I had examined a number of different court judgments, over the last couple of months, and I can see a pattern there of what might be considered undue deference towards the establishment or towards the government, and this is concerning because we would imagine that the courts are there to do a check, to check and to check unchecked power or overreach of government actions, where necessary. And I think we're at a tipping point here, that there is an opportunity here for us to say, as litigants, that the balance has gone too far, and how we fix it, I think, is another issue. I'm suggesting a particular approach that might work, but I'm certainly not in a position of authority. I'm only a litigant. I'm at the bottom of the tree, really, in terms of the bottom of the hierarchy, in terms of. But at least I can always look up. You can, when you're down at the bottom of a hierarchy, you can spend a long time figuring out kind of what's going on, upstairs, or that kind of way. So you can learn a lot by where your position is, even if it seems that you aren't learning that. You can be a very good learner. So never give up, because there's always, the more you learn, just keep learning, and that will stand you in time. So I'm always I'm a kind of a continuous learner. People say I'm a scholar, but I actually see myself as a lifelong learner. Every day is an opportunity, and but obviously learning is cumulative, and you develop learning and scholarship over a number of years. It doesn't happen overnight, and anybody that is scholarly, has worked for it and earned it, certainly worked for it. So that's the story. So I'm asking the question, I think, and I suppose it's a very important question, and without mentioning any names or saying that anybody is responsible for this, but I think that there is definitely a pattern emerging that suggests all over the world that courts are becoming increasingly deferential to governments, and how to fix that is one thing, but also there's a huge problem with access to justice. There's no point in saying there isn't. There is, because all you have to do is go into any court now, and it's full of litigants and a person who can't afford legal representation, and that is not going to change. The government in any of these countries has not come out and say everybody's going to get full legal representation. They're finding it very, very difficult to give us, to give people healthcare. So they possibly would prioritize that, and even that is becoming very, very difficult, hugely difficult to access healthcare. I mean, I met somebody recently who just couldn't find a doctor for 4 or 5 years, and it's getting worse. So access to healthcare in Ireland now and then it was something recently mentioned by one of my favourite people in the USA, Senator Sanders. He went for president. He's fabulous, but he asks great questions. But he is very concerned. It's like he's asking the same questions over in America as what we're going to be asking here. Now, he hasn't asked questions about access to justice, but like he's asking every single question that I've asked and he's asking. That's Bernie Sanders. There's a heart of gold and real softness about it, but he's there and he's still, fighting for justice and fighting like Carter, Jimmy Carter, another fellow I was really very fond of. The two of them were kind of very closely aligned in terms of very humane, very compassionate, the epitome of what you would like in a person, real decency and that empathy and kindness and, just warmth and deep intelligence and deep integrity. That these people are rare in the extreme. Anyway, so the question I'm asking is our justice system still fit for purpose? So let me just when we talk about justice, we often focus on rules, procedures, and outcomes. Now, if anybody wants to make a comment, they're invited to make a comment. But I'm very concerned about being harassed or being intimidated. So could I respectfully request that the few people that come on, not to engage in the issue, but to offer insults, refrain from doing so. That's my code of conduct. So that's just a point. I have a code of conduct which invites perspectives from everybody, but not insults or abuse. And I mean, the amount of, abuse that I've been subjected to, we have collected a number of them. It's even from one person, it's completely unacceptable. So when we talk about justice, we often focus on rules, procedures, and outcomes. But there is the deeper question we rarely ask: does our justice system actually resolve conflict, or does it simply decide who wins and who loses? I mean, that was something that was said to me in a case. This is a win-or-lose system, and the winner takes it all. That's really what I was told. It was kind of part of a narrative that was prepared, but it did ask the question to me. It asked me, like, when I looked at that question, I said, well, if that's the kind of system we're in, this is a challenge to change it. So rather than taking it as in person, I took it as, well, there's a challenge here in this question, win or lose system. And, it kind of suggested to me that I was in the wrong system. And, well, here you are now, here's the challenge to change it. So rather than thinking I was, the loser, inverted commas, I took that as the challenge. Okay, so, all right, you're telling me the system, I'm really the winner. I should be the winner, but I'm actually the loser because, well, there should be no winners or there should be no losers, actually. So let's turn it around and reframe it. So reframe it in a different way. So the challenge that is for me from that point is to say, no, it's not that. It's that this system is unsuitable going forward. So this is my response to that challenge. So I'm looking at that question now as a challenge rather than an opportunity. So in a society shaped by inequality, trauma, and complex human relationship, it's worth asking whether a system designed around victory is still fit for purpose. And perhaps this was a challenge put to me, The win-lose model, a system under strain. Most justice systems are adversarial by design. Two sides compete, one prevails, one fails. So, this is what's very concerning, that justice is a game. The win-lose is the game. And, the consequences of this over time, I think, has led to an awful lot of harm for people and for democracy and for truth. That model assumes equal resources, equal resilience, and equal access to expertise. In reality, most people in the squeeze middle enter disputes unrepresented, exhausted, or already vulnerable, particularly if you're, in protracted litigation or, any kind of litigation like this is very stressful, without a big legal team. When justice becomes the contents of endurance, money, and procedure, outcomes can drift away from the truth and away from fairness. When justice causes harm, justice is not only about decisions, it's about what institutions do to the people who turn to them. So I mean, this is what a number of people have done in recent times to try and ask for help from the courts through their separation of powers duties, and believing in it, and then feeling that epistemic injustice, your truth is a knower, you're wronged as a knower, that's a great concept that really reflects my sense of injustice. That's a great word, epistemic injustice. Wronged as a knower. Or feeling wronged as a knower. When individuals engage in good faith and experience silencing, dismissal, or predictable disadvantage, the harm is not just legal, it's moral. A system that promises fairness but routinely produces foreseeable injury risks losing legitimacy even when procedures are technically followed. When truth counts, adversarial systems present themselves as truth-finding, but in practice they often filter truth through strategy. I mean, strategy now nearly is everything. In a situation where you're trying to expose the truth or get to the truth, the strategy nearly, filters out the truth. This is how I see it, all these procedures and technicalities and all of that. So complex reality simply doesn't fit neatly into win-lose boxes. Lived experience, context, and shared responsibility are easily sidelined. When truth becomes a weapon rather than a shared goal, justice becomes narrower, not stronger. Justice that resolves, not escalates. This is the point. This is where I'm coming from with regard to just looking for solutions here and remedies, in the legal language. There is another way to design justice. Systems built around dialogue, guided negotiation, and arbitration first processes aim to resolve conflict before it escalates. Trauma-informed approaches prioritize safety, voice, and meaningful participation, conditions that make honest engagement more likely, not less. These models do not replace courts, they reposition courts as a safeguard of last resort rather than the default battlefield. And a lot of legal professionals or trained legal professionals might actually like to work in the adversarial model. They might prefer that. They may have difficulty with the win-lose, particularly say, you often hear people saying, I would never work in family law. I will not work in that area because I think it's, it doesn't deliver justice, etc. I've heard that a lot, that there are people who are, morally have moral issues with family law, but they might be people who would be quite happy, to work in an arbitration-based system. Where there's where it's about solving and resolving disputes rather than escalating them and causing further difficulty or harm as they may see the current system. So it's particularly, I suppose, important for family law, but there's also employment law. There's an awful lot of bullying in the workplace and things like that, and perhaps early arbitration. The earlier these issues are resolved, the better through this sort of process. So our affordability is a justice issue. Justice that people cannot simply afford is justice in name only. Prolonged adversarial conflict externalizes costs, financial, psychological, and social, that are borne by individuals and then by society. Systems that resolve disputes or repair earlier and more humanely are not only fairer, they are more sustainable. Justice systems teach societies how to handle conflict. Do we want systems that reward domination or systems that reward listening, accountability, and repair? Heal. A justice system that heals is not weaker than one that punishes. So this is my big thing. The healing, this is my big idea, that we should reposition our justice system to having a layer arbitration first, which is not just affordable, but has a different view of what justice is, and that is healing rather than punishing. So I'll mention that again because this is my big idea, that a justice system that heals is not weaker than one that punishes. It is stronger morally, socially, and economically. The question is no longer whether change is possible. It is whether we are willing to redesign or to design justice that truly serves the people it exists for. So that's getting a lot of attention worldwide, and it's a simple concept. I mean, it's very, very simple, but putting it into practice, I mean, if anybody has any ideas, this is my big idea, and it's quite simple. but it's very profound, and it's common sense. And I think it's a vision of justice that is, partially in some jurisdictions. It's very limited in Ireland. There's a little bit of it around Europe, and where there's a little bit of it around Europe, there's better engagement. There's better engagement with the political system. There's higher voting and that sort of thing. But that's not, in other words, there's more satisfaction with the legal, with the law, and with the politics, and the law and the legislation. So people can engage with the political system better when the laws represent more of what they want. This is how I would see it. So that's just so I'll make that point again, that just to recap, justice systems teach society how to handle conflict. So that's a thing I'm very interested in, dispute and conflict resolution. So do we want systems that reward domination? So anybody that's domineering can stay away from my website. I do not reward domination, or systems that reward listening, accountability, and repair. So a justice system that heals is not weaker than one that punishes. It's stronger morally, socially, and economically. I mean, if your justice systems, as they are, the adversarial system, I mean, the harm that it does to people, I think it's just, if you're talking to people who are in litigation for a long time, it actually is doing huge harm to people. And, it suggests that we should be looking for alternatives. Tweaking it, I don't think is going to produce, any kind of real better systems. And, everyone says the world is very dark. We're living in times of great darkness. And so this is an opportunity to kind of reconsider justice in a way that might bring more light, and healing into the world. But I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, and we have to convince the policymakers that there's merit in our argument, and I think there is. I mean, I've done a lot of research, so my videos are based on a lot of research, and you can see it on my profile or my papers if you want to read them. They're being read all around the world, so they're common sense, but there's also something in it. There's something there, and I think it should be explored. So, and it would be fantastic if Ireland could lead in this area. It really would. It would be phenomenal if we could lead in this justice reform of the justice system, given that it's not working for so many people in the squeeze middle, and they need a break. Everybody in Ireland says the squeeze middle need a break. What about giving them a justice break, and a break from all this adversarial litigation, and to bring it down and say this is not working? We're the first to say we need a new system of justice, because we are now, we know that this is not working. This system and this adversarial model is just not going anywhere fast, and it is destroying people's lives, and it's putting a darkness where light could be, where a better justice system could be the beginning of a new age for democratic renewal.